Parsha of this week, which is Parsha Yitro. And we're basically going to talk about how from this Parsha we learn that not only is God a national God for the entire people of Israel, but also a personal God. We have in this Parsha the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 declarations, which is erroneously translated as the 10 Commandments. The reason it's erroneously translated as the 10 Commandments is because there are 613 commandments in the Torah. But we're going to talk about one of these particular commandments, the first of the 10 declarations. Before I get to that, we have to see how did we arrive at Mount Sinai to be able to get the Torah. You recall in last week's Parsha, we had the splitting of the Red Sea. At the end of the Parsha, we had the fight with Amalek in Rephidim. And Rephidim was translated there as Rapha Yodayim. Why was Amalek able to succeed for a while over Bnei Israel? Because Rapha Yodayim, they were weak in their Emuna of Hashem. They're weak in their belief of Hashem. This week's Parsha, we have the following sentence. Vayisu mirfidim. They went, Bnei Israel, children of Israel, left Rephidim. They traveled from Rephidim. V'yavar midbar Sinai. They came into the wilderness of Sinai. And it goes on to say, Vayachnu by midbar. They camped in the midbar, in the desert. And then the key wording, very interesting wording, is Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Haor. The children of Israel camped next to the mountain. The word Vayichan is in the singular. It's as if the Torah is telling us about one person camping. We weren't one person, we were several million people. So why the language Vayichan Sham? And Rashi says, and it's very critical, Vayichan Sham, when they came to Mount Sinai, they were no longer split into factions, but they were B'lev Echad, Am Echad, one people, one heart. Therefore, Hashem was talking to us singularly. That motif of the unity of Bnei Israel that enabled us to receive the Torah continues with the very first of the Aseret HaDibrot. And the very first of the Aseret HaDibrot is Anochi, Hashem Elokecha. I am your God, personally, your own individual God, not said in the plural. God is speaking to each one of us individually. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Hotzaisicha Meretz Mitzrayim, Mibeis Avadim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Let's talk about this first of the Aseret HaDibros, of the 10 declarations. The Davidovich Shalom points out that this Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the first thing that is written in the what we call erroneously the 10 Commandments, the 10 utterances, he says, Hu Yesod HaEmuna. This is the basis of Emuna, of faith in God. And as the Rambam says, he quotes the Rambam and many others, who says that there's a question as to why, okay, if God is telling us that he is our God, why is it necessary to start with he brought us out of the land of Egypt? Why didn't God start by saying, I am God who created the world. And they explained this. The Davidovich goes on to explain this, that there are two levels of Emuna. One is Emuna, belief, faith that God is one, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And that God not only created the world, which would have been sufficient had God said, I'm God who created the world, but Asher Atzaysichem Eretz Mitzrayim Beis Avadim, he didn't just create the world and then go off to the distance and look and see what was happening, but he's also not only a borei, but a manhig. He's a manhig, he directs and is involved in everything. Ose kol hamasim. And we also have in this concept the holiness of the people of Israel. Because it says in the same story about taking us from Egypt, the very first thing that says is that I'm taking you, children of Israel, to me as my people. The Am HaNivchar. And it's anybody who doesn't believe in these two things, that both God is the God of the world, is the creator of the world, but also is the manhig who runs things and who chose Bnei Yisrael, the people of Israel, as his chosen people, they're lacking in Emuna. And he goes on to say, that the basis of Emuna, of faith, is that we don't look to anybody else, to any other reasons for what is happening around us, but God. It says, Umanig l'chol habruim v'hu levado asa v'osa, he has done and he will do and he does do everything that happens. You remember in the Parsha of last week, we had the plague of darkness. And it says, with regard to darkness, Vahi choshech afela b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. And I mentioned this last week in the shir. There was darkness throughout, great darkness throughout Mitzrayim, throughout Egypt. V'l'chol b'nei Yisrael haya or b'mosh v'osam. But the Jews had light in their dwellings. And the Davidovich says this was the revelation to each individual that as a Jew with Emuna, we can live in the light and we don't have to live in darkness. In Egypt, we reached a level of Emuna by seeing. It wasn't a question of somebody has to prove, did this not happen? We saw it happen with our own eyes. We were there at the splitting of the sea. We saw it. So we have Emuna B'Riah. And this Emuna B'Riah, Emuna of seeing, is accessible to us even today when we see things happening. If we open our eyes properly and see properly, we will see through the Emuna of B'Riah, of seeing, that this is God's work. There's one interesting point that the Davidovich brings up about this pasuk, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God. I mentioned before there are 613 commandments in the Torah. The Habakkuk, as well as others, were trying to reduce the number of commandments to say, what is the basic commandment out of which springs everything else? And Habakkuk reduced it to one. And he says, alachas v'tzadik b'emuna so yichya. A righteous person lives by his emuna, by his faith in Hashem. We see that we are able to access the faith in Hashem, the faith in God, receive the Torah. If we go back to what we said at the beginning, Vayichan Shan Neged Ahar, by having unity. The unity that we needed to receive the Torah is the same unity that we need today to live as a Jew and as a human being in this world. My blessing to all of us is to let us be united, to be able to increase our Emuna and faith and trust and belief in Hashem. Thank you on behalf of the web yeshiva.org. Shabbat Shalom.